All right, welcome short course students to your first formative assessment walkthrough. Please note that I'll obviously take you through this and that you can, as always, you can just contact me if there are any questions. Please don't forget to fill out that self-assessment register. Don't forget to keep up with the classes. This will be a reflection of weeks 1 to 4, and then you have to submit between the 4th and the 8th of September. So you have about 3 weeks or so, 3 weeks to get started and get done, and then go to Col Campus and then make sure that you do submit your assignment there. Okay. All right. So again, as I said, it's covering units one, lesson 1 to 3, as well as unit 2, lesson 1. Okay. So the brief, this is an individual assignment. Please read all the instructions below, paying particular attention to the evidence requirements before you commence working on the assignment, right? Let's go through each question. Question 1, it's made up of 30 marks. 1.1, in your own words and using your textbooks as only a reference, please explain the likely difference between good and bad content for radio. So provide 3 characteristics for each, and you can see we'll as we scroll down, we will look at the rubric itself to see how certain questions are broken up. It's very important that you do go to that. I'll just give you a quick preview of where to find that. So if you just scroll all the way down, you'll see that there it is, 0.5 marks for each. And then each one of these questions will be broken up so that you know exactly where your mark allocation is allocated. Right. 1.2, listen to as much local FM radio as needed and identify an example for each of the characteristics provided in question 1.1. Use the table below to help guide your answers. So I want you to reproduce this table, right? And use the same headings, the same columns, etc., right? And then also the 1, 2, and 3 for each of the radio stations, right? So the good characteristics, the station that you listen to, the time and the date. Then you will detail the explain of that content that you heard, and then why it made for good radio. So you listen to, for example, 5FM. You heard I don't even know who's. I think is it Dan that's on Breakfast? I think it's Dan. It's Dan. So let's say you listen to him on the Breakfast Show and his team, and you quite like, let's say, a particular call out or an interview that he did, right? You explain that particular interview and that call out or that feature or that competition, and then you'll explain why him and his team like produced or executed great radio. Was it captivating? Was it interesting? Was it rich? Was it new? Was it surprising? Any one of those and more aspects that you have learned in the lessons. Right. The same goes for bad radio. You can again listen to any FM radio station. Again, give the time and date that you did listen to the radio station and the show, please, as well, and explain the content as well as why you think particularly it was bad radio. Again, were the presenters invested or were they somewhere else? Was the content that they supplied or they prepped, was it kind of basic? Was it predictable? Was it boring? Was it not of interest to that particular target market or listenership? And so you can carry on there. 1.3, analyze the business models of SABC owned radio stations and discuss which 3 radio stations primarily rely on advertising for their revenue stream. Please provide specific examples of the type of commercial content you would hear on these stations to support your analysis. So I can't give you the answer. I can't give you a lead as to what those 3 stations are. That is in the lesson and or the lessons. But now you got to take those stations, and it says, take a particular example that you hear, a type of commercial content that you would hear on these stations to support why it is that you believe their primary objective is to create money, like to create the revenue stream, right? So again, you would use either an example of a competition, a promotion, like let's say online promotions, digital in the digital space or so, anything that would like accrue money at the end of the day, and you'll get those marks over there. 1.4, compare the programming content of Jacaranda and SAFM, specifically focusing on their music to talk ratio. So based on your analysis, if a student was studying at home with the radio on, which station would you likely play or would likely play more music? Please justify your response with your own supporting reasons. So I think that one's very, very self-explanatory, right? If I give you anything more, I think I will just give away those answers. Compare and contrast the creative freedom and limitations between a podcast creator and a radio presenter regarding experimenting with formatting. So when we say that, what is the format? So format is dictated by and to us at radio stations, whereas with podcasting, remember, what is it? It's a free for all. You can do whatever you want, say whatever you want, except barring, the real red flags that you don't go to, which is like human trafficking, child pornography, racism, hate speech, that type of stuff, right? Right, but everything else is fair game. Explore the factors that contribute to this difference, highlighting specific aspects such as target audience, broadcasting regulations, and production considerations. So, what I want you to do with that is, I would like you, so that you are very aware of how many points you are making. I would build two different columns, one for radio, one for podcasting, right? So that you can see the differences between the two. Then go to provide South African examples of unique formatting approaches that are commonly seen in podcasts, the ones that I've mentioned, and explain why these might be challenging to implement in traditional radio broadcasts. Okay. Again, when you see this kind of multifaceted type of question, break it down headline. So like put a little headline or a little header for each section that you are answering, just to make sure that you can get the right marks. Question 2, 15 marks. Below is a summary of a conversation that took place on Jacaranda or in Jacaranda FM's afternoon drive show on the 22nd of March, 2022. The presenter, Rihanna van Heerden, nice ex-boss there, um, asks his co-presenter what's his take on this woman, and the latter answers that it's a man in a female swimsuit, with which Rian agrees. The co-presenter then refers to Caster Semenya, who was born that way but was not allowed to compete, and that this case is unfair. Rian agrees 150% and says that he has watched all the interviews with this quote unquote guy. And I think, why the hell are you in a pool with women? His rankings changed. He competed with male swimmers until now. The co presenter says it doesn't make sense if you fully developed as a man and competed against men and then changed later and compete against ladies. Rian followed up and stated, we need to be careful when we live in a world that is too politically correct, rather. We're going to find ourselves in a situation like this. We'll see more and more of these situations pop up, and the line has to be drawn somewhere. You can see it's a man. There's no confusion. You can see, compared to the other people competing against him, right? So it's a man. So why is he swimming in a swimming pool with women? Because he is transgender. Why is he there? The co-presenter agrees and says, then it makes no sense to have gender in sport at all. Why don't we just all compete against each other then, if it's okay for you to change so that you can get an advantage? Rian closes the discussion by saying it's 100% complete insanity. So there was a complaint laid at the BCCSA and reads, this afternoon, the 22nd of the 3rd at 22:06, the topic of trans women in the Olympics is brought up, and the radio hosts were being extremely transphobic. For example, they were misgendering her, as well as commenting that she is a man in a woman's swimming costume, as well as saying, why does he get to compete with women as soon as he makes up the excuse that he's transgender. This type of discrimination is unacceptable, especially when being broadcast nationally. Personally, I just think that whether it's nationally or internationally or any type of region, community, campus, this would still apply. As a trans person myself, I feel highly offended at the sheer disregard towards transgender people these hosts have. They have the platform to spread education rather than nasty opinions. Transgender teenagers may have heard that and now feel even more discouraged, realizing that in 2022 they cannot even be accepted. I'm disgusted at this behavior. The radio station is Jacaranda FM. Now, for this question, you have to imagine that you are the broadcaster having to defend Rian and his comments to the BCCSA. Using Section 4 of the BCCSA code, which you'll find the links in the code of conduct, and you'll find the links there in your lesson, right? And considering exclusions clauses 3 and 4 in your own words, write a response to the BCCSA explaining why you believe these comments did not transgress the code of conduct. In other words, that they did not break the code of conduct. It's a great example. It's definitely something that you probably might have said, oh no, I totally agree with the transgender woman, because there's direct kind of blasphemy against, against the transgender population and against Casta herself. But you are working for the station and you have to do a job. Otherwise, you're going to have to pay an immensely huge fine. And also, you have to take off one of your biggest jocks on air or suspend him at least, right? Do the apology, show that you are incompetent as a station. And so you've got to do quite the job here. All right. 15 marks. Break it down into points. Be a bit of a lawyer. Go kind of think of yourself in law of order or Ally McBeal or any one of those law related programs. Question 325 marks. Listen to an hour of a commercial station's music station's afternoon drive so that you can name the station, date, time, and show that you listened. For 1 mark, keep listening and log a complete and complete the following, right? So give the start and end times of each of these elements. Note that these elements could happen multiple times throughout the hour. Make a note of each time: the news, the sports, the traffic bulletins, the spots, or advertising brackets. Okay. So this is excluding, right? So let me just I'm going to finish the question so you can see what my recommendation is to get the marks all at once. How many songs did the show play in the hour you were listening to? Do you think they played too little or too many songs? And explain why you believe that this is a justified answer that you're providing. How many voice links did you hear? So log each voice link by giving the length of each. That's really important that you do that. Get the correct timestamp, get the correct duration for that particular link. 3.5, recreate the show clock of the hour you listen to using your listening log. So your clock must accurately depict the information you captured in the listening log. So an easy way to kind of do obviously 3.2, 3.3, and 3.4 is if you go and log all of these at the same time, right? So in other words, for example, saying that news started at the top of the hour. So you'll obviously, again, if you've gone through lesson 3, you'll know exactly what I mean in terms of the clock itself. So 00.00, and it ended at 3 minutes 40 seconds, right? So you would say, so not 3 minutes past, let's say 4 o'clock, please just use the minutes according to the actual hour itself. So how many minutes have passed, how many seconds have passed, please be quite concise in that. And then you heard, let's say, a jingle or an ID, for example. I won't subtract marks if you don't include the IDs, but they do take up, let's say, 5 to 7 seconds or whatever. But then you would log, let's say, the sports headlines that might take 15 seconds, and the traffic headlines that took another, let's say, 20 to 30 seconds, right? And then you would go into, then you would say, then a song played or two songs played, and you would say this was from this time to this time. And then from whatever time, probably like 12 past or 13 past, and 13 past 20 seconds, maybe, you might have heard, let's say, the first voice link, and that took so much time, right? So if you do it in one long log, for when you are doing the log itself, I will give you the marks and if you do it correctly and it makes sense, because obviously I will be looking at the time and saying this now you're losing track of time, like it doesn't really matter. But also again, so you will have, if you have logged the voice links, right? Then and I count five, I will also presume that you know that it's, let's say, five links, but you will have to answer the question, like the subsidiary questions, like there, right? And let's say for completeness sake, just a number, say voice links equal to 4 or 5, and then also for 3.3 just do that. But then um like I said, put it all into one log, and then you can recreate that clock directly from that log, instead of doing three and trying to recreate it from three different logs that you've put there. All right, we're nearly done. Question 4, 25 marks. 4.1. In the context of the radio and podcast industry, reflect on your personal attributes and experiences that shape your unique style and approach. Instead of simply answering the common question, tell me about yourself, illustrate how your personality influences your work in radio broadcasting or podcasting. Give specific examples of when and how your characteristics have contributed to your performance and in past roles, that is, or projects outside of radio and podcasting. So it's almost like a verbal, right? Like, so let's say you're in an interview and they do ask you, let's say, you know, like, tell me about yourself. You're going to want to really focus on the attributes and the background that you do include, that highlight your technical, your industry, I say your industrial skills, so your industry skills, your soft skills, anything that really spotlights you as a really great option for them to choose, right? The number one option. And then you would, like, if there was any background. So people always say, "Oh, but I haven't any experience in radio, whatever." But if you were done, let's say, I don't know, promotional work, in supermarkets, or you were in retail, like you have communication skills because you had to sell stuff and you had to engage with people. So it's a transferable skill at the end of the day, and you shouldn't sell yourself short just because you haven't been on radio yet. So now, but if you've also been a brand activator or brand ambassador, like, explain that and explain who you've done it for, what exactly you've done. Tell me more about yourself. Once again, to make sure that you are on point with the points, put this in point form for yourself. Okay. Reflect on your personal understanding of professional broadcasting or podcasting by listing 5 indispensable skills that you believe a broadcaster or podcaster must possess. Use your unique insights to justify why these skills are crucial to performing the role effectively. Okay. Right. So that's straightforward. So give the skill and then obviously justify. 4.3, based on your understanding, how would you apply the SPIN methodology in helping you develop your on air podcasting personality? Provide a personal example for the SPIN that you are using. So take the methodology, say how you understand S and how that applies, let's say, one to you, and how you will then use it to improve you, and do that for each one of those points to get the marks. You'll also be awarded 5 marks for the way that you reference the textbook, right? So please remember how to do the Harvard. So if you need any assistance, go look at the Harvard referencing method, which is what we use in tertiary education. And please obviously check that spelling is correct, your grammar is correct, that you've written correctly and makes sense. Otherwise, I will take off those marks. A total of 100 marks are there. Please go through, like I say, the rubric itself. It'll break it down a little bit better for you. And I will say, good luck to all of you. And great marks, eh? Great marks. Things positive thoughts.